The 18th of September, 1931. Japan, seeking raw materials to fuel its growing industries, invades Manchuria, an industrial area located in northeastern China, known for its rich mineral and coal reserves. In the following years, there will be various incidents or armed clashes of a limited nature between the Empire of the Rising Sun and the Republic of China. But full-scale war will not break out between the two countries until the Marco Polo Bridge Incident on the 7th of July, 1937. This marks the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War that will end only with Japan's surrender on the 2nd of September, 1945. During this war, which is the prelude to the Pacific side of World War II, the Japanese army scores major victories, capturing Beijing and Shanghai. And in December of 1937, the Japanese military invades Nanjing, then China's capital. In Nanjing, the Japanese soldiers commit unspeakable atrocities and engage in a campaign of mass killing, which over the course of 2 months will claim the lives of as many as 300,000 civilians and numerous unarmed Chinese soldiers. One of the men responsible for these atrocities is the Japanese Lieutenant General Hisao Tani. Hisao Tani was born on the 22nd of December, 1882, to a farming family in Okayama Prefecture, Japan. In 1903, at the age of 20, Tani graduated from the 15th class of the Imperial Japanese Army Academy, placing 16th in his class. On the 8th of February 1904, the Russo-Japanese War began, which was fought over rival imperial ambitions in Manchuria and the Korean Empire. The war ended on the 5th of September 1905 with a complete victory of the Japanese military, which surprised international observers and transformed the balance of power in both East Asia and Europe, resulting in Japan's emergence as a great power and a decline in the Russian Empire's prestige and influence in Europe. Russia's incurrence of substantial casualties and losses for a cause that resulted in humiliating defeat contributed to a growing domestic unrest, which culminated in the 1905 Russian Revolution and severely damaged the prestige of the Russian autocracy. Tani saw combat during that war as a second lieutenant in the Guards 1st Infantry Battalion, although his training at the academy had been in the artillery. In 1912, Tani graduated from the 24th class of the Army War College, which accepted only previous graduates of the Imperial Japanese Army Academy. Supported by influential pro-German ministers and army officers, the Army War College was modeled after the Prussian War College, with German officers hired to provide training. Learning tended to be by rote memorization, with little encouragement for creative thinking or discussion among the students. Much of the empire's elite, including prime ministers during the period of Japanese militarism, were graduates of the college, and each year, the 6 graduates with the best marks were each awarded with an army sword by the emperor. Tani graduated in the 3rd place among the students in his term. From 1915, Tani was posted to Great Britain as a military attaché, and from August 1917, he was embedded in the front lines as an official military observer for the Japanese government on the combat situation on the Western Front in World War I. After his return to Japan in April 1919, he served as an instructor at the Army Staff College and was reappointed to that position in February 1924. One of the required textbooks at his college, Secret History of the Russo-Japanese, was written by Hisao Tani and detailed his experiences in the Russo-Japanese War, together with first-hand accounts of survivors. In February 1927, Tani was promoted to colonel, and in August 1928, he became chief of staff of the Nagoya-based 3rd Division, which was one of the oldest divisions in the Imperial Japanese Army. In August 1930, Tani was promoted to Major General, and in August 1934 to Lieutenant General. Conflict in Asia between Japan and China began with the invasion of Manchuria on the 18th of September, 1931, well before the official start of World War II. Despite Chinese opposition, the Japanese continued to advance, and by the 27th of February 1932, the last Chinese opposing the Japanese were forced to surrender, and all of Manchuria was in Japanese hands. Since the invasion of Manchuria, there were various incidents or armed clashes of a limited nature between the Empire of Japan and the Republic of China, but all had subsided. However, this changed on the night of the 7th of July 1937, when a small Japanese force on maneuvers near the Marco Polo Bridge demanded entry into the tiny walled town of Wanping in order to search for one of their soldiers. However, the Chinese garrison in the town refused the Japanese entry. A shot was heard, and the two sides began firing. The Chinese government, under strong anti-Japanese pressure, refused to make any concessions in the negotiations of the dispute, and the Japanese also maintained their position. As a result, the conflict continued to grow, with larger forces committed by both sides, and fighting spread to other parts of China. Following the Marco Polo Bridge Incident, which marked the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War, or War of Resistance against Japanese aggression, between 1937 and 1945, the Japanese scored major victories, capturing Beijing, Shanghai, and the Chinese capital of Nanjing in 1937, which resulted in the Nanjing Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanking. In July 1937, Tani, with his 6th Division, took part in the Second Sino-Japanese War, starting with the ongoing Battle of Beiping-Tianjin, and afterward they participated in the Beiping-Hankou Railway operation. In October 1937, the division was resubordinated to the 10th Army and attacked the Chinese troops' concentration at Hangzhou Bay. By December 1937, it shifted west to participate together with the 18th Division and 114th Division in the Battle of Nanjing, and ultimately in the Nanjing Massacre. The Japanese military arrived outside the city gates of Nanjing on the 9th of December. With the reports of Japanese brutality, most of the civilian population of Nanjing had already fled out of fear. Wealthy families were the first to flee, leaving Nanjing in automobiles, followed by the evacuation of the middle class and then the poor, while only the destitute lowest class, such as the ethnic Tanka boat people, remained behind. 3/4 of the population had fled Nanjing before the Japanese arrived. At noon on the 9th of December, the Japanese military dropped leaflets into the city, urging the city of Nanjing to surrender within 24 hours, promising no mercy if the offer was refused. No response was received from the Chinese by the deadline on the 10th of December, and the General Iwane Matsui waited another hour before issuing the command to take Nanjing by force. On the 12th of December, under heavy artillery fire and aerial bombardment, General Sheng-chi, the commander of the Nanjing garrison during the city's siege, who had earlier announced the city would not surrender and would fight to the death, ordered his men to retreat. What followed was nothing short of chaos. Some Chinese soldiers stripped civilians of their clothing in a desperate attempt to blend in, and many others were shot by the Chinese supervisory unit as they tried to flee. On the 13th of December, Hisao Tani's 6th and the 116th Divisions of the Japanese Army were the first to enter the city, facing little military resistance. From the 13th of December, 1937, the Japanese Army engaged in random murder, wartime rape, looting, arson, and other war crimes. They hunted down and killed suspected Chinese soldiers, and summarily arrested thousands of young Chinese men. Many innocent men were misidentified and killed in the process. Thousands were taken to the Yangtze River, where they were machine-gunned to death. Many Chinese soldiers were blown up with landmines, then doused with petrol and set on fire, and those who survived were killed with bayonets. Japanese soldiers also beheaded a number of Chinese prisoners of war. The Japanese also massacred families living outside the safety zone and raped tens of thousands of women. One of the main culprits in the Nanjing Massacre was the 54-year-old Hisao Tani, who was also a sexual deviant. Once, just outside Zonghua Gate, he violently raped Mrs. Ding Lan, along with 3 other women. On another occasion, he raped Liu Yuqin and 4 other women on Saihong Bridge. In yet another instance, he raped more than 10 women in the area around the Yellow Mud Pond. According to testimony from eyewitnesses to these crimes, it was a common occurrence to see Japanese military officials carry off many women to their residences, where they would take turns raping them. The Japanese who committed such violent rapes not only satisfied their own animal desires, but also aroused wild laughter among their fellow soldiers by humiliating, beating up, and teasing the women. The number of Chinese women raped by Japanese soldiers ranged from 20 to 80,000, including some children and the elderly. A large number of rapes were done systematically by the Japanese soldiers as they went from door to door, searching for girls, with many women being captured and gang raped. Immediately after, The women were then often killed through explicit mutilation. A former Japanese soldier named Shiroazuma spoke candidly about the process of rape and murder in Nanjing. "It would be alright if we only raped them. I shouldn't say alright, but we always stabbed and killed them, because dead bodies don't talk." After being raped by the Japanese soldiers, the victims were often photographed. There were also accounts of Japanese troops coercing families to commit incestuous acts. Sons were forced to rape their mothers, fathers were forced to rape their daughters, and brothers were forced to rape their sisters. Instead of punishing the Japanese troops who were responsible for wholesale rape, the Japanese Expeditionary Force in central China issued an order to set up comfort houses during this period of time. The Japanese army also looted the city and burned down many buildings. 1/3 of the city was destroyed as a result of arson. Such crimes continued from 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the types of crime. As many as 300,000 civilians and numerous unarmed Chinese soldiers were killed over the course of 2 months. The chaos, fires, and mass graves make a precise count of casualties impossible. The violence subsided in February 1938 after the establishment of a Chinese-led, Japanese-influenced government. Returning to Japan at the end of 1937, Tani became commander of the Central District Army until September 1939, when he went into the reserves. On the 2nd of September 1945, Japan surrenders. 6 months later, in February 1946, Hisao Tani was arrested on the orders of the American occupation authorities. At the request of the Chinese government, he was extradited to China to stand trial at the Nanjing War Crimes Tribunal in August 1946. Tani denied all charges at the trial, stating that his troops kept discipline, and the area of Nanjing assigned to his division had been largely evacuated due to the ferocity of the battle. When he was presented with pictures of massacred civilians, Tani said, "Who are you to say that these people were pierced by the swords and spears of my Japanese soldiers? Do not bring national feelings to my interrogation. This is not in line with the principles of law. It is not fair. A soldier's duty is to obey. I was ordered to come to China to fight and carry out my mission. The responsibility for the war does not lie with me." However, his lies did not help him escape justice. According to the ruling court, all of the Japanese commanders involved in the Battle of Nanjing, including Hisao Tani, had an equally shared responsibility for the atrocities which had occurred during the Rape of Nanking. In the afternoon of the 10th of March, 1947, the Nanjing military court stated, "After the capture of Nanjing, the defendant committed atrocities such as the massacre of prisoners and non-combatants, rape, looting, and the destruction of property. The victims numbered in the hundreds of thousands, and the brutal acts of disembowelment, beheading, gang rape, and burning alive were inflicted on unarmed civilians and innocent women and children in a manner that is unparalleled in severity. Therefore, this court sentences Hisao Tani to death." He appealed against the verdict on the 18th of March, the 24th and the 25th of April. However, his pleas for clemency were rejected. On the 26th of April 1947, when Hisao Tani was escorted to his execution spot at Mount Yuhuatai, he was 64 years old. His execution was held publicly and became a theater of horror. According to eyewitnesses, Tani looked scared, and his whole body was so weak that he could not stand up, so he had to be supported by 2 gendarmes standing on either side of him. When Tani was executed by shooting, the Chinese civilians present were cursing at him for the atrocities he had committed. There were no tears shed for Hisao Tani. Thanks for watching the World History channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.